Standing By, the show where we talk with the understudies, standbys, and swings, keeping the curtain up on Broadway shows every night. I'm your host, Caskey Hunsader. We're here at Bartini in Hell's Kitchen, and I'm talking with Sharone Sayegh and Mark Dancewicz from Mamma Mia.
Yes, I've been broken-hearted, blue since the day we parted.
Welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Sharone, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I was born in Los Angeles, and I kind of just did theater as a hobby. I had that typical like chorus line story, copying my older sister, going to her dance class, and then she quit. And then I just kind of did it throughout growing up, and then in high school I really started to get serious about it. So started taking dance class, voice lessons, acting class, all that jazz. And then I went to Syracuse University and studied musical theater. And then after Syracuse, I just moved to the city and started auditioning, and I've been here 5 years. My first equity and regional show was Cats at the Hangar Theater, which was so much fun. And then I did a regional show out in LA at Reprise. I got to work with like a bunch of famous people, which was awesome. I got to work with Jason Alexander was the director, and Lilias White, who I totally look up to, and Ken Page and Cleavant Derricks. It was a really fun show. And then I came back to the city and did some smaller like off Broadway things here. And then I auditioned for Mamma Mia here, but I actually did the Vegas company for 6 months first, and then they transferred me to the Broadway company. So when I originally auditioned for Mamma Mia, the audition started, let's say, at like 4 o'clock, and it lasted till like 6:30, and there were like maybe 12 girls there at the end, and they said, you know, we need somebody to go to Vegas tomorrow, so if nobody can do that, can you just let us know? And I didn't say anything because I could, but I was like, oh my God, like that's so crazy. I mean, like, I can't even imagine like leaving and going to Vegas tomorrow. I don't want to do that, you know? I get home at like 7, and then at 7:30 I get a call from my agent. They're like, so they want you to go to Vegas tomorrow. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God. And like, this was my first big thing, but like, I also was like, and like, so I called my mom, I'm like, what should I do? She was like, do it, are you crazy? Do it. And I was like, okay. So I called them back and I was like, okay, I'll do it. So literally this was like 7:30 at night, and my flight, they sent me the information, was the next day at 3 p.m. So I'm like packing, and I like put on Craigslist like, I need a sublet. I didn't even know like how long I was going for. I was like 6-month sublet on the Upper East Side. And so then I start packing, and like 20 minutes later I get a call from this random number, and this girl is like, hey, I saw you're posting on Craigslist. I'm like 2 blocks away. Can I come look at the room? And I was like, sure. So she comes upstairs. She's like, great, I'll take it. And she like writes me a check. Yeah, she like writes me a check just then and there. And I like packed my stuff, and I just like left the next day. It was crazy. And I was so nervous on the plane because like it was the first time I had gone into a show that was already running. Every other show I'd been in rehearsals with everyone. I totally threw up on the plane. Yeah. We like, well, there was a lot of turbulence as well. Okay. There really was. But like, we're landing, the turbulence is crazy. I like haven't eaten anything, and I threw up. I like was that girl who like took the bag out and threw up.
No.
Yeah. And then like the stewardess were like, honey, are you okay? And I was like, I don't think so. You know? And they like took care of me and gave me Sprite and all that jazz. But then I got off the plane and went to like retrieve my bags, and there was like this huge screen with like the Mamma Mia commercial, and I was like, this is gonna be awesome.
And Mark, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm from Peabody, Massachusetts. That's how we say it, Peabody. And I was kind of a punk when I was younger, and so I think my parents put my brother and I in theater to, you know, keep us busy. And so I was 8 and he was 6, and we did this community theater production of Pinocchio. And I think originally I got cast as like a rabbit, and he got cast as a policeman, but we liked each other's parts better, so we switched. Somehow that just was okay. I don't know. And then it just took off from there, and then you know, community theater, and then I just fell in love with it. I just knew, you know, that's what I wanted to do. So I went to school for it, you know, and no one in my family does any of this, you know, and they were like, what is he talking about? He wants to be an actor, all right. So I went to Emerson College, and I graduated from there, and it was like, all right, the next step is just, boom, move to New York. So I was 21, moved to New York, didn't know anybody, you know, didn't know what I was doing. I think I had like $1,500, and that went in like, you know, 5 days, and I was like, Mom, I need some money. And then, you know, I started waiting tables, and because all I knew was that I had to support myself and pay my rent. And I did that for like 2 years before I even auditioned for anything, because it was just so hard to like figure out how everything worked and be on my own, and and then I went into an audition for Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at La Commedia Dinner Theater, and I got it, which was just so exciting. And then I went to Ohio. I was there for like 3 months, and I ended up staying there and doing a couple shows there. Then I got cast in the European tour of The Who's Tommy, and that was just the most magical experience ever. I traveled all through Europe, and took me to Japan for 3 months.
How long was that tour?
It was about a year in Europe, all throughout, and then we came back for 6 months, and then they called us again, and they were like, Japan wants the show, and every single person came back. Like it was just such a magical experience. So we all went to Japan, and it was incredible. And then I came back here, and I auditioned for Mamma Mia. They called me like 3 times before I actually got it. They were like, just calling to see if you're available. And I'm like, guys, I'm available. Whenever you call me, I'm going to be available. And then they finally called me for the Vegas production, and I went out there, and I was there for a year and a half. Met Sharone, and then I came back here, and then it was right around the same time. I think we found out that we were gonna go, and we both got the call, and then they were supposed to send us the contract, and I wasn't getting the contract, and I remember I would call her, and I'm like, did you get your contract yet? I'm freaking out. I'm like, they're not gonna change their mind, right?
I was like, Mark, I don't know anything.
I know.
He's like, my mom wants to buy tickets. I don't know what to do about this.
I still call her now. I'm like, do we have a matinee today? Like, I don't know what's going on. She's like, yes, Mark.
Sharone, who do you cover in the show? So you're in the ensemble,
right?
And then you also cover some principal tracks, correct?
Right. I understudy Allie and Lisa, which are the 2 friends that Sophie, Sophie, the girl that's getting married, is like her 2 best friends that come for the wedding. Yeah.
And who do you cover?
I cover Pepper, who is like Sky, the groom, his sidekick, best friend.
Great. And then you're also every night in the ensemble as well.
Yes.
So let's talk about the Broadway production. So you're both in it every night. It's a high energy show. Over 10 years now. It was last fall. It was its 10th anniversary. Yeah. So what's it like being a part of a show, that's got this history behind it already being such a long running show, and the energy, the well-known songs, things like that?
Well, I think that's one thing that's really cool about Mamma Mia, because it's such a high energy show and they really want all the ensemble members to be unique and different. There are so many parts in the show where we're allowed to do whatever we want. We have like 8 counts of like, do whatever dance move you want, or you're slow-mo in the background, but your movement can be whatever you want. So I think that keeps it fresh every night. If the same show is the same for 10 years, I don't think it would be as lively as it is today. So that's really fun. And we really do change what we do every night, which is so great, because they encourage it. And it's interesting. Sometimes the audiences are like really touristy, and you can kind of tell because they're not really like getting the scenes, you know what I mean? But they just love the music. They love the music,
sure.
So it's so great. At the end of the show, we have that little mega mix after the bows. When the audience like stands up and dances and really gets into it, it's just like, I was thinking to myself, like, at the end of my job, people stand up and clap for me. Like, that's crazy. That's amazing. I was telling my boyfriend who, works in an office, like, can you imagine at the end of your workday, you like turn off your computer and people are like,
yes, awesome job!
Like, how amazing is that? That's my life, you know? So I'm really grateful for that.
And I just remember being that kid when, my parents first brought me to New York, and I saw Grease. And it was this huge snowstorm, and we had tickets to Phantom the second night, and Phantom closed, but Grease was still playing, so we went and saw it twice. And just the feeling you get, and I just remember like looking up there and being like, this is what I want to do, and I just loved it so much. And now when I look out and I'll see a kid, and just the smile on their face, and I'm like, that was me, and I know what they're feeling, like I can see it on their face, and just the fact that I can, we're bringing this happiness to like so many people out there that, it moves them. You just see them get up and they're dancing, and it's like they don't care what they look like. People are in the audience. I mean, and some people really go crazy. They're pulling out some dance moves, and when we see them, and I'll just yell out in the middle of it. I'm like, yes, and then I'll look at the people on stage. I'm like, you see this one? He's going crazy. It's awesome, and it's really special, and it's like just this feeling that comes over me sometimes. Like my body just starts to like tingle, and I get these chills, and I'm like, it's pretty special.
We'll be right back with more of Standing By.
You can try having the time of your
more Standing By. I'm your host, Caskey Hunsader, and we are here talking with Sharone Sayegh and Mark Dancewicz from Mamma Mia. Well, let's talk about, what it takes to be covering roles. So you're covering two women ensemble, but it's not a swing or a standby kind of situation where you can sit and focus on them every night. So talk to us about the challenges of being in the show every night, but then needing to go on for Sophie's friends.
Right.
At sometimes just a moment's notice.
Right. Well, I think the fastest I found, one time I actually just went on in the middle of the show. She just got sick and threw up backstage, and they were like, "You need to change your clothes." I was like, "Okay." So that was the fastest notice I ever got. But the first time I went on for Lisa, actually, it was like 2 weeks after I joined, and I hadn't learned it all yet. I had learned Act 1, and I hadn't learned Act 2 yet, but there was no one else to go on, and they were like, you have to do it. So the first act was great, but then the second act, I literally did not know what I was doing, and the stage manager was with me behind the stage with the book being like, "You're gonna say this line, you're gonna go to this person," and I was like, "Here we go, let's do it." But it was so much fun. I totally made up some lines, and they weren't upset about it, of course. So when I first joined, I actually only started understudying Lisa, and then about 6 months ago now, I started covering Allie as well. Mm-hmm. And that's almost more challenging covering too, because they're almost so similar. They're different characters, but their lines are so similar. And there's a scene that's just the three of them, and I'm always like, is this Allie line or Lisa line? And I know both of them. Yeah. So sometimes I'm like, which one am I? But the cool thing that being on stage every night is I can watch them, you know what I mean, and see what they really do from the perspective of the stage. So it hasn't been too challenging. It's been a little challenging to understudying both, but it's so much fun, and everyone is so open and wonderful, and they want you to make the character your own. You don't have to do it exactly the way the other people do it, so that's really cool. Is it
weird when you're on stage as Allie or Lisa and then seeing a swing in your track and being like, that's me?
Right. I know, it is a little weird. Sometimes I'm like, who is Sharone tonight?
Yeah, we say that. We're like, all right, the Mark track goes. Yeah.
Mark, what about you? What are the challenges you find in having that in your back pocket, but still going on every night in your ensemble track?
I love covering Pepper. I was lucky. I got to actually play it for 6 months, and then just covering it now. The one thing about Pepper is that he does the Russians in the number. So if I get the call that I have to do that, I'm like, let's start stretching. Get to the theater early.
Even though you do Russians every night.
Yeah, but it's just for some reason. There's not as many, and it's like 1, 2, 3. And I'll literally just start counting. The first one happens, and then you go, all right, that just happened, and then you got to keep on going. So I'm counting. I'm like, all right, 7, 8, 9. But it's great. It's like Sharone said, it's a lot of fun, and it keeps things fresh, and it's so cool to have some lines, and when you first go out there and you start speaking and you're like, oh, that's what I sound like on a Broadway stage, and when you get a couple laughs, and it's just this electricity that goes through your body, so it's a lot of fun. It's really exciting.
Do you find now, especially that you went on for the 6 months as Pepper, do you find that it now, when you do have to go on again, it's like ingrained into you after being in it for such a long time, or do you still have to go back and kind of look at your notes and think about it before you go on?
I know it pretty well. We just had a cast changeover, so a couple things have changed, and we tweak stuff like that, but I definitely still go over the dance breaks in my mind before I go on and all.
Now, being with the show for as long as you have, I can only imagine there are some stories of some crazy situations. Is there anything that in particular that stands out that you memorable experience?
Well, one time when I was my own track, for one of the big dance numbers at the end of Act 1, I wear this costume, and this is my first time where I've had costumes made for me, which is so cool. So everything fits perfectly, So I'm wearing this halter top costume that's it's made out of a bunch of little pieces of leather that are woven together. And then from here down, they stop being woven, and it's fringe to the floor. Okay. Which is really cool. Looks awesome. It gets caught in a lot of things while I'm dancing, but I'm used to that. But because my stomach is showing, I'm not wearing anything under. I'm not wearing a bra or nothing. And the top is held together with elastic, and the back is held together with snaps and what are these called? Hook and eyes. Mm-hmm. So one night I'm really giving in. I'm really feeling my dance move, and we do this move where we lift our arm, and then we put our hand on our partner's shoulder, so a man would be right here. And I don't know what happened, but I like lifted my arm really fast, and the elastic snapped, and my top totally came open, and I did not realize it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
Yeah.
boobs to the audience, and I didn't notice. And so I'm like dancing with my partner Andrew, and I'm singing, and he's singing, and he's looking at me like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh my God. So then I'm like, what do I do? So then I'm, holding it, like the flaps are like hanging over, and I'm thinking like, should I leave the stage or should I just keep going? So I'm like, no, I can't leave the stage, because the end of the dance number, every single person on stage gets in a circle and holds hands. And I was like, my spot will be missing if I leave, so I just went into the circle, but I didn't hold this person's hand, obviously, and just held this person's hand, and it was so embarrassing. One of the dance captains was watching that night, and he said he didn't even notice. But they must have been
They wasn't
out
watching
for like,
very closely then.
They must have been out for like a good 30 seconds.
One time when I was covering a different part in the show, Eddie, who's like the other sidekick to Sky, and I think it had been a while since I went on, and it's during like the flipper scene, and all of the guys come and ambush Sky, and we're gonna take him to his bachelor party. And so Eddie comes on, and he is supposed to unbutton Sky's shirt, and later the shirt comes off. And so I was having a hard time getting the shirt, and I was like, oh man, all right. And so then I think finally I just like ripped it. And so then I'm like, all right, and then I realized someone's supposed to be speaking, and then it's supposed to be me, and I completely blanked. And the line is, Sky goes, what's going on? And Eddie goes, sorry, buddy, it's an ancient island tradition. You see, the night before the wedding, the groom dives down to the old shipwreck searching for the necklace of Helen of Troy. And he goes, what's going on? And I went, Irish. I don't know where. Yeah. I don't know where. You know this story. You know the story. I don't know where. I think something about like ancient and islands sounded Irish, and I was like, if I just start talking, eventually it come to me. Like literally it was just sounds, just. And so then I realized, and I'm like, my God, and this is happening. Center stage, down center stage with the spotlight. It's like finally, everyone's looking at me, and I turned to the guy playing Pepper at the time, Michael, and I look at him and I'm like under my breath and I go, what's my line? And he looks at me and he goes, I don't know. And I was like, you ass. And so then I finally like pulled it together and I said some sort of something that kind of went along, and allowed the scene to continue. But I definitely got off stage and I went, wow, like, did that really just happen? And of course, every time I went on after that, like, I would freak myself out, and I would have to say that line like 3 times. And it's a little bit of a tongue twister. I don't know what it is about that line. It's like a lot of information, and I was just like, all right, I got it. So that was my story.
All right. So let's talk about the show a little bit more. There's so much energy. The dancing is crazy. How do you keep up your energy to do 8 shows a week of this insane music and choreography?
I actually never started drinking coffee until I joined on Mia. I now love it.
Yeah.
I never really realized how much the audience has to do with the energy. Like if they're feeling it, it like fuels me, And if they're not, then you have to find it within yourself, of course. But this is my first Broadway show, but I've heard from people in the cast that have done multiple Broadway shows that we're really lucky in the sense that we really are so close, and the whole vibe of the show backstage is so positive and so friendly. So like we're all really good friends. We all really care about each other. It's not really like nitpicky and bitchy or anything like that. So we have so much fun together. It's not like I don't have to like pretend to like these people on stage. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's cool that we can rely on each other for that kind of energy. Yeah.
Well, before we finish up, something I always like to ask, and it is your favorite moment in the show.
And, we do the 3 songs of the Megamix after we bow, and the first one is Mamma Mia, the second one is Dancing Queen, and the third one is Waterloo. So after Dancing Queen ends, usually the audience is already standing up, really excited, which is so much fun. Then we go into Waterloo, and it's just the 3 dynamos that are still out there in their like spandex outfit. And then there's a moment in the middle of the song where the dads run out. The same one.
I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm in the front. So I literally love to watch people, like they're watching, they're enjoying, and then they're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
that's amazing. You know, like I love watching the transformation on their face when they see the, you know, these middle-aged men in these like ridiculous costumes, and it's like right at the end of the show, so nobody expects it, you know.
It's the moment where all the people that want to stand but just don't feel comfortable standing yet, stand.
Right.
Like they come out and they're like, all right, that's it, I'm getting up.
Right.
You know, like.
Right. And then from then on, it's just like a big party, and it's so much fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my favorite moment.
That's a good one. I think my favorite part is probably Voulez-Vous, which is the big dance number that closes down the first act. And it's just, I think it's the first time that the whole cast is actually on stage together. And so it really feels like that big, you know, production number, and it just closes down. You can feel the excitement in the audience, and they know that the first act is coming, you know, to the close. And the choreography is a lot of fun, you know, and everyone's just feeling kind of sexy and, you know, and energized, and I love my dance partner, Allie.
Well, that's all the time we have for today on Standing By. I'd like to thank my guests, Sharone Sayegh and Mark Dancewicz from Mamma Mia. You can check out the show on MammaMiaNorthAmerica.com for information and tickets. It's playing at the Winter Garden Theater on Broadway. And for more information about this show, check us out at StandingByTV.com. We'll see you next time when we raise the curtain on another episode of Standing By.